Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fourth presentation of Avalanche Canada's 2021-22 webinar series. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Brent Strand, and I'm your producer for the evening. Pre-COVID, our Staying Alive event was live in Revelstoke, and man, we had a packed house there every year. You know, it's so good to see so many locals who come to our town to work and shred the POW and come and join us for some safety and education awareness out there. We went virtual with this event last year and it was pretty successful. So we want to welcome you both from local folks and folks from afar to join us tonight. First, we'd like to acknowledge that our session is being hosted in the territory of four nations, the Sinixt, the Secwepemc, the Ktunaxa, and the Syilx. As a national organization, we also acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit nations whose lands we live and recreate on. First off, we'd like to thank all our sponsors that have been supporting us financially during these challenging economic times and working with us to reach new backcountry users, such as our government partners, our program partners, our premier sponsors, and all our other contributors out there. We also want to acknowledge our local businesses that are helping us and partnering with us tonight. You know, our big partner in this event is RMR for the great prizes they've donated tonight. And the big prize, folks, at the end of the night is a AST1 course up at RMR. You know, they also got some lift passes going on. So stick around and we're going to give out some prizes as we go throughout the night. The webinar sponsor tonight is Columbia Basin Trust. They're a huge supporter and sponsor of our local and youth programming out there. You know, as well, we have Revelstoke Tourism. They have an ambassador program. It gives folks such as yourselves, you can apply. There's an incentive package that helps with the discounted seasons pass up at RMR. So if you're interested, just go register revelstokechamber.com/ambassador. So with that being said, folks, a few housekeeping rules on the old Zoom platform. You're all muted automatically. You can't use your webcams. There's going to be opportunities to ask questions at the end of each presentation. We're going to ask about 2 questions just so we can keep things moving. It's going to be a long night here. So if you want to ask a verbal question, just put that raise hand function at the bottom of your screen there. Otherwise, you can just type it in the Q&A. We got Alex Cooper. He's the moderator tonight, and he's going to be hitting up that chat box with some resources and links to keep you guys going. So tonight's presentation, Staying Alive. It incorporates many messages from the key organizations in Revelstoke. You're going to learn important tips from Avalanche Canada, Parks Canada, Revelstoke Search and Rescue, the Revelstoke Snowmobile Club, and Revelstoke Mountain Resort. We want people to go out there, have fun in our winter backcountry, but we also want everyone to stay safe and come home each night. Our co-hosts tonight are going to be Avalanche Canada forecasters, Grant Helgeson and Brad Christie. We also have a couple guest speakers on board tonight for you later this evening. We're going to have Troy Leahy and Nick McNutt. It's a great evening planned. And as we all experience with weather and stuff like that, sometimes things change and sometimes the plans change. So I'm going to hand it off to Grant. And we're going to switch things up a little bit because we're going to have to get Troy up on board first as the weather's coming in, as he's coming to us live out at the Blanket Creek. So I'm going to pass it along to Grant now.
Hey, thanks, Brent. Do you copy us over there? Looks like we're probably good. Great. Live and direct from Blanket Creek. That is so cool. Blanket's one of my favorite places in the world, and to have the legendary Troy Leahy join us from there is pretty sweet. I'm Grant. This is my co-host Brad, both forecasters at Avalanche Canada here. Looking forward to joining all of you. Psyched everyone's turned out tonight. Couple quick questions before we get started here. I'm curious what you're doing in Revelstoke this winter. If you've got a job at the Hill, if you have a job somewhere else in the community, if you've come here to not have a job and to shred POW, Canadian ski team. If you live here for the snow, if it's your first winter in Revelstoke, kind of what's bringing you here. If it's the cheap land prices and the untouched backcountry, just a lonely ski resort that no one's never heard of. What brings you here? Are we getting some folks voting there, Brent?
Yeah, it's a slow trickle. We got about only 30% of you folks in there. Just click on the buttons there, pick what you got going on so we can get an idea who we're talking to out there today.
And of course, it is possible that people are joining us from outside Revelstoke, and that's great too. But this is a pretty, from Vancouver, Marie Amonte says, So yeah, there'll be plenty of content for those outside of the Revelstoke bubble. We've just recently learned there actually is something happening outside of Revelstoke, but we'll try and touch base on that as we move along. It'll be pretty Revelstoke centric here tonight. So, but there's lots of stuff for everyone. Heading out for vacation the 11th. Great. Van Island, Ontario. Okay, cool. Thanks for chiming in.
There you go. There's your results right
Sweet.
now there, Grant.
That's the best.
We
Just
got
here
a
to
lot
shred
of pow
pow.
shredders.
Certainly what brought me to town first. That's great. Yeah, I love it. What sort of avalanche training do folks have? None is a perfectly okay answer. A little, maybe some seminars or a workshop, or maybe you've done the AvCan course on our website. Or have you taken some formal training, an AST1 or AST2, or have you gotten into the full pro level scene and gotten your industry or ITP1? We're just curious. It helps us to shape the voice that we use here and figure out who we're talking with. AST1. Okay, great. That's the most, but plenty of folks with none or just a little. A few pros out there. Awesome.
Good, we got like 1/5 in AST2s.
Yeah, that's
Moving
sweet.
up.
20% AST2s. I think to date, that's probably my most valuable course for navigating how I travel in the backcountry. I think that one's one that really changed the way I did things. So psyched to see that. Boy, it's a lot of pleasure to introduce someone like Troy Leahy. Troy is absolutely a local legend. The fact that he's with us from the Blanket Glacier Chalet up in the Monashees, where he's getting pounded with snow as another atmospheric river takes hold of the province. But Troy's experience is not live. Troy is the man, says Chris Day. Absolutely. Troy is the man. He's a local legend. He worked at the ski area at Sunshine Village from 1998 to 2006. It's a long time. At Craigieburn, New Zealand in 2000. And he ran the show for the whole operations and the avalanche forecasting at RMR, Revelstoke Mountain Resort, from 2007 to 2016. Was he your boss at all during that period?
Yeah, I learned a ton from Troy in those times. Those were some of my first forecast helper shifts.
Cool.
Thanks,
rock
Troy.
Star. And then Troy's been ski guiding for Kapow and CMH since 2016. He enjoys teaching avalanche courses, and with the help from Avalanche Canada, brought the Staying Alive evening to Revelstoke from the Bow Valley. So this is kind of Troy's baby from the Wayback Machine. Live and direct from the Blanket Glacier Chalet, I give you Mr. Troy Leahy.
Howdy, folks. Yeah, super stoked to be here. My forte is actually standing up in front of people and doing this presentation. So doing it online with some funky bandwidth problems from 1,800 meters in the Monashee, where it's snowing about S3, 3 centimeters an hour outside, is a pretty cool experience. And I'm basically Grant's gonna run the program for me, and I'm just gonna talk about Revelstoke Mountain Resort. It's a pretty spectacular place. We opened Revelstoke Mountain Resort on December 22nd of 2007, and it was a super exciting time. We don't have like great big ski areas open up very often in places where it snows an absolute ton. And for me, coming here as an avalanche forecaster was a super exciting time and a really amazing opportunity. Just for Revelstoke Mountain Resort, the stats were at summits 2340 meters, base elevations 512 meters. So we've got 1,300 meters of lift service terrain, 3,121 acres of terrain, and almost 1,100 centimeters of snowfall annually. That is a whole bunch of snow. Just for you guys coming in, if you're new to North America or new to the ski hill, we just want to talk about the Alpine Responsibility Code. It's really easy to kind of understand, but make sure if you're new to the ski hills, familiar yourself with it. It's going to be written right on the back of your lift ticket, so it's hard not to know. As far as zones within the ski area that are notable, we'd really appreciate it, especially if you're coming down to the Stokeshare. We've got slow zones, super easy to see for the patrol puts these out every day. And if you can just obey those slow signs, it's basically places where a whole bunch of trails are going to come together and probably near the base of a lift. And yeah, it's funny, if you're a really good skier, you might not feel like you're going that fast, but if you're not a very good skier, or you're new to skiing and somebody whizzes by you, then it's a pretty uncomfortable feeling. So please respect those slow zones as you're traveling through the ski area in the area boundary. Area boundary, super important thing. The ski patrol up there at Sunshine Village or at Revelstoke Mountain Resort works really hard to maintain that boundary. It's marked with rope and signs above 1,600 meters, and below 600 meters, it's marked with signs on trees. Stevie Wonder could see the boundary. So if you've left the boundary, you know that you've left the boundary. And basically at common exit points, we've got some information to help you guys figure out what you should be doing if you are leaving the ski area boundary. Signage looks like this, and beyond the boundary, there's going to be no ski patrol necessarily and no avalanche control. You're going to have to be responsible for your own avalanche forecasting, your own avalanche rescue, and basically, excuse me, navigating your way away from the ski area and then back into the ski area. At big common exit points, you're going to have a big ski area boundary sign kind of explaining a back of your checklist of all the things you should have done, equipment you should have, and some other information. There's going to be some ski patrol numbers and search and rescue numbers to be able to help you if you do need hand when you're outside the ski area boundary. So what does it take for an avalanche to happen? We don't have a lot of avalanches in Saskatchewan, for example, in Canada. So we need terrain over 25 degrees. Really, you know, most avalanche terrain is over 30 degrees, 30 to 45 is where it's kind of the sweet spot. Less than 25 degrees are kind of very, very rare. And the other things that's going to make avalanches happen is snow and weather. So usually wind and temperature are going to make avalanches happen. And really in the forecast for the next few days, it's going to be pretty busy for the ski patrol to sort of get things open for opening day on the 27th. Avalanche terrain within the ski area boundary. There's actually quite a bit at Revelstoke Mountain Resort, all that over 30-degree terrain. And it's going to basically open in stages. And if we're going to show you some pictures of signage in a minute here, but if you see an avalanche caution sign and it's in the yellow position, then it's good to go. If you see an avalanche close sign, red sign, just like a stop sign, then basically beyond that sign, there's active avalanche control going on. Ski patrols are either ski cutting, throwing explosives, or basically the weather conditions are such that even doing those things will not be enough to sort of maintain the safety of and integrity of the ski area, and we'll just leave it closed until basically the storm subsides or the weather subsides and we're able to kind of control it. And it's super challenging. You know, you're out there, it's you got to hike a long time, you got to go uphill, you got a bunch of explosives in the middle of a storm. It's hard to see, and you need to see your results in order to feel good about opening the terrain for people that may not have avalanche gear on them. And that's what we kind of strive for in North American ski resorts, is to kind of create an environment where you don't have to worry about avalanches as long as you're obeying the signage within a ski area boundary. Zone opening sort of thing. So if you look at the mountain from kind of the bottom up, the first zone that's going to open will be Kill the Banker, and it's funky. It's below tree line terrain, but it's super steep. It's right underneath the gondola line, and that's likely going to be the first sort of zone that will open. The next zone that they'll open at the ski hill is the north and the south horseshoe off the top of the Stoke Chair, and that'll give you access to Separate Reality, Lower North Bowl, and South Bowl. The next sort of stage of opening will be the funnel fence, and that'll give people access to Three Bears, Lower Powder Assault. After that, we'll get the Lemming line open, which will have Mid Powder Assault and hopefully access you to Greeley Bowl. And after that, we'll have Sub Peak open, so you can hike up the walking track, ski upper the North Bowl, ski the upper south side. And lastly, the Greeley Bowl, Gracious Ridge, will allow the big traverse or coming from the top down in Powder Assault and get you into that terrain, which is always super sweet. So how do we know when to do avalanche control? Basically, we've got a whole bunch of really well-trained and well-educated people up at the ski hill, and they keep track of the weather. They dig snow profiles in the same place once a week, so track weak layers within the snowpack. We'll do test profiles in places where, we're worried about new avalanche issues kind of popping up from storm shears or new snow avalanches. And basically we'll go out and do active avalanche control. We'll look at, in Canada, we've got an InfoX, which is all the operations in North America or in Western Canada will share their results with other operations, so they kind of have a good understanding of what the snowpack problems are in the big picture around the ski area, and that kind of helps the ski area to do a good forecast as well. We've got really dive deep into the weather, so we know what's going to happen during the next day. And then we also will post at the ski area, we'll post the Avalanche Canada forecast for the outside of the ski area boundary. Active avalanche control. If you see those red signs, then basically you've got a guy on the other side of that sign line throwing a bomb that you see in this photograph. And we're only going to go and throw bombs when we're really expecting avalanches to happen. So those red signs really do mean stop. You shouldn't cross that line. If you do cross that line, there's very likely an avalanche is going to happen right on top of you. And it's a serious thing and potentially a prosecutable offense to enter an avalanche closed area. Couple of patrollers working hard, and you got to imagine that it's a pretty serious job. You're going out there using explosives, which are dangerous. You're an avalanche terrain, which is dangerous, and you're trying to basically mitigate any bigger avalanches that are going to affect skiers within the terrain. And that would be like a size 2 avalanche, which is about 100 meters wide, 100 meters long, and likely over 25 centimeters deep. So once we've kind of figured out that we've got identified pieces of terrain where we're expecting avalanches to happen, and we'll go out, given the forecast, given the weather, identify where those places are going to be, then put a plan together with patrollers to go out and mitigate those forecasts. So you've got North Pole here, and there's probably 40 individual paths from the top of Powder Assault down to the terrain that's just above the downtowner. This is a fantastic example of a avalanche that was triggered by skiers on the south side above Hot Sauce. And it's an interesting piece of terrain. And if you know the area ski area at all, Hot Sauce itself, it looks like, it's a big groomed run that people would have cut so that we could, make a nice groomed run. But in actual facts, in 2007, when we showed up, it was an avalanche path that ripped out from 2,300 meters down to 1,600 meters. And there was kind of 30-year-old trees in there because it happened in 1985 on a big surface wear event. We went and cut those trees in 2008, 2009, so we could make it a nice groomed run. But next time you're skiing down Hot Sauce, just have a look at the trees on the side of the run, and you'll notice that many of those trees don't have branches on the uphill side, especially right down at the bottom. It's quite a spectacular avalanche path. Another one, this is a patroller doing a kind of looking for layers within the snowpack on the upper south side. And right there, you've got a fracture line that's a meter and a half. And that's, a very destructive avalanche that you really don't want to be involved in and buried at. Another view that's right on the ski area boundary on the south side. And you can see those big chunks, patroller kind of checking it out. And yeah, that was a controlled event in probably 2011. So if you're going to leave the ski area boundary, we do the ski patrol does a really hard job to mitigate all those problems within the ski area. But once you leave the ski area boundary, it's essentially the backcountry. People kind of call it the slack country and this and that. And it's only slack because it's an easy place to get to. But as far as the danger and the avalanche hazard that you're going to be dealing with when you're out there, it's not that slack. It's super real. And over the years, we've had lots of people have really close calls and a couple of tragedies as well that we've had to deal with. Where you can get your information, if you want to leave the ski area boundary, there's lots of good points. Start with Avalanche Canada, look at the public bulletin. The ski area is going to post the snow report, the current weather data, and the avalanche or the weather forecast. They're going to have the avalanche bulletin, danger rating from Avalanche Canada, and then go to the website, look at the snow report, look at the webcams, there's weather forecast, avalanche bulletin, sub-peak weather, all kinds of good avalanche or good information for you to kind of build a process to feel good about what you're doing in the backcountry. This is a photo of a large destructive avalanche out of one of the door chutes. So it's on the outside of the Greeley area boundary. And it's really easy. I mean, you can see that boundary is set along a big moraine. Old glacier used to, was in that upper North Bowl underneath the Greeley chutes, or underneath the door chute, sorry. And we basically put that moraine in there, or the boundary on that moraine, because it's a nice high point in the terrain. And everything outside of that is got huge exposure from big cornices overhead, and then it all ends up in a big terrain trap. And if you look at that image, right at the end of the terminus where the big powder cloud is, I'll mark that point in your mind, and I'll talk about that point in a couple of slides. This is looking out to the south side, what's often called, this is Kokanee Bowl. And this is a really quite an easy access point. But as you can see, this is viewed from the ski area, and that's a good 2 to 3 meter fracture line, probably a size 3 avalanche that traveled about 750 meters in vertical. And the fracture line at the top was probably about 300 meters, 400 meters across. But it's a super commonly known as the cat ski terrain. The first few years of the operation, we ran a cat ski program out there, but as things got sort of busy, then the operation sort of moved to down near Trout Lake. And now it's just a really fantastic place to go into the backcountry. But remember, it is the backcountry. You might see a lot of tracks out there, but you put your tracks in the wrong place at the wrong time, and there are pretty major consequences. This is a really good story, to be honest. And it's when I think about staying alive and the reason we started it, I cut my teeth in the avalanche industry in the Bow Valley at Sunshine Village. And back then, Parks Canada in Banff National Park and Sunshine Village, Lake Louise ski area, and Norquay ski area all got together to do, you got lots of new kids coming to Banff from all over the world, and they may or may not have a lot of avalanche education. So Parks Canada organized it with the ski area and, help people that, hey, you're in the mountains. This is how things run here in Canada, and try to give people some information. So when I moved to Revelstoke in 2007, the first year we were pretty busy just getting things going. The second year we were like, okay, we got a lot of people coming here. And my assistant forecaster, Chad Hemphill at the time, we kind of got together and contacted Avalanche Canada and said, hey, we used to do this thing in Bow Valley, and we think it's a really good thing to do. And do you think you could give us a hand sort of and some support, helping people who are new to Revelstoke to understand, the hazards that are in the backcountry? And this picture, if you look at this photograph, this is door number 4, and you can see a tiny little ski patroller at the top of that. And then just below that, you're going to see a 4 to 6 meter fracture line. This was a good story, and this to me is what staying alive was all about. The person who triggered this avalanche was named Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Wilson had sort of attended the avalanche or the staying alive event in Revelstoke in October or November, whenever it was that season. And then flash a few months later to February, he learned a few things at that event. And a few months later, he and some friends are going out and skiing some really big terrain. And they did a bunch of things right. They had avalanche transceivers, they had all their gear, they had a pretty good plan. But quite frankly, predicting avalanches is a really hard thing to do. The tricky part with this avalanche or this particular incident, Mr. Wilson sort of approached the edge of the cornice, hard to see. Maybe could have done a little bit better by having a rope on or something like that, but did not. Came up, triggered the cornice. The cornice, he fell in with it, and then it triggered that kind of 4 to 6 meter fracture line you see. And if you think back to that slide I talked about a couple of minutes ago, the toe of that debris is right where he ended up. He took a 500-meter vertical descent and went about 500 meters horizontal. The key point here is Mr. Wilson had been to a Staying Alive event, and my buddy Joe Lammers had spoke of that, and he talked about what to do if you're buried in an avalanche. And Joe mentioned that as the avalanche slowed down, it's really good if you can feel yourself, if things slowing down, to really move and try to make yourself a big air pocket. And luckily, Mr. Wilson remembered that at the exact right time. And as things slowed down in that avalanche, he lost his snowboard and, things were not going good. But he remembered that little piece of information and moved a whole bunch and managed to give himself an air pocket. And we got in there, the avalanche was witnessed, and he survived a 26-minute burial. No injuries, no anything. He lost his snowboard, went back and found it in the summertime, and I sent it to him back in Montreal where he moved to. But it was a happy ending. And really that is what we're hoping to accomplish with the Staying Alive event. It's really tricky when you're moving from Ontario or England or Australia or wherever you're from into this kind of environment. And it's a real environment. There's super consequences of what you do if you leave the scary area boundary. They work really hard to mitigate all those hazards within the scary area boundary, but we really want you to understand that as soon as you leave that scary area boundary, it's big terrain, it's real terrain, and the hazards are real. So you need to have education, you need to have the right equipment, and you need to have a plan and make sure the people you're with are the right people and they have the same equipment plan and sort of goals that you have that day. Yeah, and right here, I'm up at the blanket right now. We're at 1,800 meters. It's snowing about 3 centimeters an hour, and we got another atmospheric river on the way. So we are off to a banger looking season, skiing knee deep to thigh deep POW up all day, and we got a whole bunch of that in our future. And opening day on the 27th is going to be a really good time. Thanks a lot for your time, and I'm super stoked to answer a couple of questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Leahy. That was awesome. Appreciate all of your wisdom and history in the area. Yeah, can't be beat. We'll let a few questions trickle in, and we'll hand over to Brent and Alex, where we'll get into a prize draw here.
I'm just going to see, we got a lady with her hand up, Julie Cosette. I'm not sure if she has a verbal question. You can unmute yourself and go ahead there, Julie, if you got a question for Troy. And sometimes I know folks, they just put their hand up by mistake. So if we don't hear Julie.
That was by mistake.
Oh, all right. There you go. At least
I'm not sure I got on my hand. I'm just going to lower it. So I didn't know I put my hand up.
Okay, no problem, Julie. That's fine. I'm just going to mute you back up and lower your hand for you. So what do we got? Any questions in the chat box there, Alex?
I've got one question in the chat box for Troy, if he wants to answer this. Do you always accessorize the duct tape? You don't have, that's a joke.
Absolutely. Started in the Rockies in the 2000s. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Another one came in from Cole Nutma asking, when's the best time to take an AST2 course?
I would take an AST2 course about a year after you've taken your AST1 course. It's super challenging. I think most people like to take AST courses early in the year, December, January, to sort of set you up for the season, which is a really good practice. But to be honest, any time is a good time. The problem with taking a course maybe earlier in the season is that really the snowpack is pretty simple. There may only be 1 or 2 problems in the snowpack. And currently I'm teaching, we just finished today an AST2 course up here at the blanket. And to be truthful, right now there's not a lot of big problems in the snowpack. I think in the next few days with an atmospheric river coming in, we're going to see a whole bunch of new problems in the snowpack, or maybe just one big one. But really, any time is a good time. If you take one in March, there's going to be a whole bunch of different problems in the snowpack that you're going to be able to investigate and have to deal with. But honestly, any time is a good time.
Well, I guess there's one more question that's directed specifically at Troy in the Q&A box. So I'll ask it to him, and then we'll let him go and get back to his guests at the blanket up there. And it's from Brett Miller, and he just wants to know, what are the top 3 things in your bag?
Top 3 things in my bag? That's a good question. I guess I got, as a guide, I kind of like feel like I'm responsible for a bunch of people, but certainly I like beacon probe, shovel, or transceiver on my person, a really good shovel, a 3-meter probe in my pack. Beyond that, in my pack, I've got a solid first aid kit. I've got a repair kit with a bunch of things that I could potentially repair my, any gear or equipment that other people have. And really, the one thing I really like is my rescue tarp. And it can be sort of made into a boggin with a couple extra prussics that I carry and some carabiners to, be able to tow somebody's, or if worse comes to worse and we had an accident and we had to stay there, basically kind of make a shelter and keep somebody comfortable until a helicopter rescue is available.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much, Troy. I think that's all the time we have for questions, because we've got a long way to go tonight. So thanks so much, Troy, and keep things going. Actually, before we do, we got 2 prizes to give away. I almost missed that. First 2 prizes come to us from Arc'teryx and Dakine. Arc'teryx has donated a Fernie toque to give away tonight, and the winner is Claudia Dow. So Claudia, if you just want to email your information, your address to producer@avalanche.ca, I'll put that email in the chat just in a second. Our second prize right now is a 60-liter Ranger duffel bag from Dakine, and that will be going to Nate Corcoran. So congratulations, you 2. Email producer@avalanche.ca with your address, and we will ship those out to you. And I'll pass it back to Grant and Brad.
Wicked. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Troy. Enjoy the gold range. I'm a little jealous right now. Okay. Here we go again. Avalanche Canada. This is what we do. My 10th season forecasting with Avalanche Canada. I'm going to talk to you about all the different things that we do, and there are a lot of them. Really your one-stop shop for everything you need to go into the mountains, as Troy was speaking to you earlier. And look at the diversity of the things that are happening out here. We've got sledding, we've got skiers, we've got people snowshoeing, we've got ice climbing. And Brent, if you can, while we're just on this slide, if you could throw up that poll, I'm just really curious how people are accessing the backcountry. Are there mostly skiers or split boarders in the call, or are there folks that are climbing ice? Yeah, great. So are we any mechanized folks among us? I grew up ski racing in Montana, but I would say I'm equal parts sledder now, if not more some years. Ice climbing, man, there is some ice climbing that happens in Revelstoke, but it's just really hard to go climb ice when you can be skiing POW, in my experience. I sold my ice tools a few years after I moved here. They didn't get used. Yeah, okay, so mostly skiers, a few snowshoers, a couple sledders. Great. Thanks so much for that. Appreciate that, Brent. So lots of different things to do in the backcountry there. So let's talk a little bit about the Avalanche Canada products, and there are a bunch of them. We're going to get into avalanche forecasts, the mountain weather forecasts, different educational resources that exist on the website, forecaster blogs, which are making a real push at getting more of those out this year. In fact, the first one is out today. So along with the first forecast, I might add, the trip planner, the Mountain Information Network, which we affectionately call the MIN, and of course the mobile app. We do all sorts of different stuff, and this is not even an exhaustive list of what we do here. So here's the homepage. When you get to the homepage, you're going to see the different regions. Obviously, if you're heading up to the pass, you click on the Glacier Park forecast up there. If you're going to go south of town, you get South Columbia and North Columbia to the north. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But you click on that, and that gets you into the meat and potatoes of the avalanche forecast. And so you see the headline up there. That's always our kind of our one sentence report of what we think is happening in the backcountry. And then you get into the danger ratings, kind of like that stoplight. Is it go, no go, or somewhere in between? We get into the avalanche problems, which are kind of the who, what, when, where, how big, how likely. So what kind of problems are you going to interact with in the backcountry? And then we also get into the training travel advice, which is that friendly neighborly advice that we like to offer people about how they can mitigate risk in the backcountry. As you dig a little bit deeper in our website, go to the Learn tab. This is where you can get into things like AvSavvy, the continuing education, the glossary. There's all sorts of different quizzes that you can do up here as well. There's videos. You can like refresh yourself every season. So if you feel like it's a little bit rusty, or it's just time before you're going to do your AST course and you want to, the ski hill's opening on Friday and you're just jonesing, jump in here. AvSavvy is pretty cool. There's a lot of great resources, especially for folks that don't have any training yet. And if you do have a little training, it's a great place to brush up and then test yourself about how well you're doing. The training courses, of course, the AST or Avalanche Skills training courses. We talked a little bit about that earlier. AST1, AST2, which Troy just got done teaching there with the more advanced 4-day course. Then we have the MAT. I think that's a great course too. The Managing Avalanche Terrain. It's a 1-day field course. And of course, the Companion Rescue Skills. There have been some amazing stories that have come out of the Companion Rescue Skills. I can think of at least one prominent example where a group of folks that were usually riding together, they got together, they did a Companion Rescue Skill, learned about different things like deep extractions, deep burials, kind of refresh themselves. And then later that season end up saving a member of their group or another party. I think that that's really important. It's a really easy idea to think like, oh, I got my AST, I'm good to go. But continuing education is where it's at. So really encourage folks to get out there and get after some of those other courses to keep yourself fresh. So when you're browsing the Avalanche Canada map, you might see a bunch of these blue dots, and these are pins from the Mountain Information Network, the MIN. And you can submit to the MIN on our website. You can use the mobile app. Make sure you're running that latest version of the app. I think we did a big update last year, and everyone should probably be on that newest version. But if you aren't for some reason, just make sure the latest version of the Avalanche Canada app to make it work the best. And then you'll also see some of these pins. There's the blue ones, the MIN pins. The avalanche incidents are seen by having a blue dot, little red dot inside of it. And so those are folks that have shared with us. It's so rad when people share incidents with us and just share that information out there in the community. I think that there can be a real risk of when we have this internet behavior that we just that we shun people when they make a mistake. But the reality is that like everyone who's talking on this call, myself, Troy, Brad, like we've all made mistakes. Nick, I'm sure, like you make mistakes and then you gain that experience and you move it forward. And it's pretty cool if you can share that with other people. So I really encourage you to do that. You'll also notice there's some little, you can't actually see them on this slide, but if you go to the website, you'll see the little black weather station icons, and that's where you can kind of get information about how much it's snowing overnight, what the temperature is, all that kind of stuff.
Hey, Grant.
Yeah.
Do I have to know that much to be able to post on the Mountain Information Network?
Such a good question.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to be an expert to post on the MIN. Anybody can post there, and it doesn't need to be in this professional language. In fact, I'd rather it wouldn't be. Photos tell 1,000 words. So if you want to put a photo up there, even if it's a photo of how good your day was, there's a lot that as avalanche forecasters we can take away from a photo like that. There could be snow in the trees. It tells us that it hasn't really been blowing much. It might just be blow or pow in your face. Tells us that we have a great light density storm out there. So thank you for that question. That's so good.
Yeah. Any info that you can put up there is helpful to avalanche forecasters, and it's helpful to the other people trying to get out there recreating. Absolutely.
Thanks. That's a great point, Cookie. Love the MIN. And it's amazing. I don't have the number at my fingertips right now, but it's in the thousands, the number of MIN posts that we get every season now. So thanks so much to you guys. Essential gear: avalanche transceiver, shovel, and probe. This is important. So if you're a new person to the backcountry, I would really encourage you to not buy a used avalanche transceiver. A lot of them are outdated. You got to make sure you have a digital 3-antenna avalanche transceiver. So if you're unsure, take a look at if you go to gear at our website, you can see which ones are officially recommended. But I don't know, use climbing gear, use avalanche transceivers. I'm not super into it. I would rather have one that was brand new out of the box and I knew the history of it. Gotta have a shovel, gotta have a probe. How long of a probe do we need out in this part of the mountains?
3 meters or more.
3 meters for sure. So a nice long probe. And this stuff too, play with it early in the season. Make sure it's lubricated, that it's working well. Pull your probe apart. There's that the cable that runs through there. It can get some frays on it.
Yeah,
Like,
play with it during the season. Like you got a day you went to go out and the weather or something with your plans kind of goes the wrong way. You got some time outside to like get your gear out and practice.
Totally.
Yeah, make sure things are still working and make sure your skills are still working.
Absolutely. And this is, I think that we often refer to this as AV gear, but it's really has way more purpose than that. We're using this stuff to dig in the snow, to pull, to probe down and feel different things, for glacier travel, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, rad. All that stuff is really important. Extendable shovel. I could cover that one.
Mm-hmm.
Recommended gear.
I'll go back to the shovel for a second. Like, are we going to want to carry like the lightest shovel we can? It's tough walking around in the backcountry. Like, do we want something real tiny that's easy to carry?
Light is right. I mean, I'm not as old as Troy, but I'm almost 40.
Light is good, but we want to be able to move some snow. So think about that. Think about what you want to accomplish with your shovel.
Absolutely. I like to have, of course, an extendable shovel. I prefer the D grip, but everybody has a preference. Nice big blade. Sometimes people like the ones that go into the hoe mode too, but like if you could just move a lot of snow with it and can be setting it up quickly, playing with it, lubing up those little points too, like little clips that hold them together. I've seen that happen so many times. People pull it out. It's like, oh, my clip is jammed in a weird way. And like, oh.
Main point is just know your gear.
Yeah, for sure.
Know how yours works. There's lots of different good options out there, but know how your stuff works.
Absolutely. Know your gear. Airbag packs. At work, I have an airbag pack on every day. And there's times where I ride with an airbag pack in the backcountry too. They are heavy, but they can make a big difference when you do make that mistake. So something that is a recommended piece of gear, of course, they're getting lighter and lighter. They're getting to be that much better. That's kind of a personal preference thing. I think it can reduce trauma. There's some great studies out there that says that, it can reduce fatalities. And an airbag pack is essentially works about, it makes you bigger. You get into an avalanche, you pull the ripcord, this balloon inflates, and it's like shaking up the mixed nuts, the Brazil nuts just rise to the top. And hopefully you do too. And that's kind of the idea. Inverse segregation, I think, is the super. Yeah, I'm wearing glasses.
Fancy
so.
words.
Airbag packs are great. This one, I think we would actually move this to an essential category at this point. I mean, it is expensive, but I remember we have these at work, of course, and they're great. I personally use the InReach, and I really like it. It's very small. It's very packable. I had an incident when a good friend of mine whose knee blew out in a remote place. We had radio comms at that time, but that's what really made me want to have one of these things all the time, because you can be very prepared. You can have the right rescue gear, but you don't want to spend a night out if you don't have to.
Yeah, and what problems do we have with cell phones?
Man, there's just not that much cell phone service around Revelstoke.
Or even if you have service, like I know, especially when I was working at the ski hill and we were trying to help people that had gotten stuck out in the backcountry after sweep, their battery dies really fast. Same thing, I was working with Parks Canada, have someone gets hurt out there. It's like, even when they got reception, cell phone batteries die fast in the cold. So having a backup for communication is really helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And the last point here is actually radios, which I would actually, for me and anybody that I'm out with, I would call 100% essential piece of gear. I want to be able to talk to folks. I want to be able to say down to Cookie, like, how was that? Like, this is less effective as I'm waving my arm, like,
Yeah, when we can have a discussion about the specifics, it's helpful for me to know what I'm stepping into.
Absolutely. So I think that's just a really great thing to have. I would move that for myself. I wouldn't be in the backcountry without a radio. I'm going to have an InReach, and I think those things are just really important. Of course, like cell phones, radios, GoPros, heated gloves, these things all need to be separated. Just the general rule of thumb is 20 centimeters apart when you're actually cruising around. So you can have your cell phone on, needs to be 20 centimeters apart. The real problem happens when you go to search mode. You'll get a lot of interference from your cell phone, even from a GoPro, any kind of electronic device. So that's when you need to separate them further. They should be at least 50 centimeters apart at that point. But yeah, keep those things separate. Definitely don't keep them in the same pocket.
I know for myself, like when I get in that search situation, I'm kind of amped up. And for me, that's not a great time to remember I've got to do something with my phone. So I give up being able to take cool pictures of my fun day sometimes, but I often keep my phone off and in my pack and then pull it out when I need it at breaks or to look at a map. And that helps me. It's not everyone's way of doing it, but it helps me when I get to that stressful moment of having to start searching.
I think that's good practice too. Mine's in my hip pocket. My cell phone's in my hip pocket zipped up. I wear the avalanche transceiver on my belly. That's pretty close to 50 centimeters of separation. And then when I go ahead and like when I'm in search mode, my arm is also extended. So I feel like everything's on my phone these days.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
yeah, so that's another thing. Lots of good methods of being safe. Just we're being conscious of what choices we're making.
Absolutely. So this is the trip planner. You can jump on this with the backcountry resources tab. This is only going to get better and better. But this is a cool way to, if you're kind of looking to say like, here's the forecast, like what kind of terrain is appropriate for the day. This does it all for you. So you go to our website, go to backcountry resources, go to the trip planner. The avalanche forecasts are live today. So the trip planner is fully functional. And that can just give you a really good idea about what kind of terrain is in and what kind of terrain is out. Avalanche.ca/weather, the mountain weather forecast. I love this thing. People are always asking me like, talk to, and we have to give credit where credit is due. We don't actually write this thing in-house. This is written by the good people at Environment Canada who produce these incredible backcountry forecasts for us. And I would just really encourage you to use this for your weather. It's written at a level that there's a lot here, and it's written for somewhat more intermediate to advanced users. But I think just by reading it, you get a good feel of how it works. And the more you read it, the more you're going to kind of get in touch with the language that they use there. And there's lots of cool pictures. Meteorology is a black art, that's for sure. But I really encourage you to read that thing and go through the different images, play around with it. There's some really cool tutorials you can use on our website. It's actually pretty approachable.
Yeah, if you keep reading it pretty regularly and look at the weather forecast you're used to on the Ski Hills website or Environment Canada, you'll find by the end of the season, you start piecing together some things. You're like, oh, hey, now I realize why the Environment Canada snow forecast keeps changing, because we're seeing these little blips of precipitation on the map on the mountain weather forecast. So
totally,
it might seem like a bunch of mumbo jumbo at the start, but keep reading it and you'll start piecing some things together.
Yeah, same is true with the forecast. Like I would read the forecast every day. It takes, even though it takes us so many hours to produce, it takes like 2 5-minute tops to read the whole avalanche forecast. And the more you read it, the more you're going to be in touch with the snowpack as it moves through the day. So get that gear, get the training, get that app, and then get home safe. We're going to move it into another question period here. And we're also going to get into some draw prize time. Do you have any questions from the floor there, Alex? Doesn't sound like we have any questions.
The questions are flying in here.
Oh boy.
We've got, well, I can say flying, but we've got a few questions. One person, Jennifer Joyce, was asking about the inReach and how you carry it. Like she asking, do you wear it clipped to your pack like you might in the summer when hiking, or do you keep it somewhere more secure? And then the second part of her question was, do you keep it on or off until you need to use it?
Good one. Two schools of thought on that. I keep it in my pack at all times. It's because if you were to get caught in an avalanche, avalanches are violent. They will, you hear these stories about like snow being, pushed up behind your eyelids, like snow will go everywhere, it can tear your pants off. So it's inside my pack. It's zipped up. To be totally honest, when I'm cruising on my own, I do leave it off. My phone, I link it to my phone in the morning. So just in case I need to use it throughout the day, I can turn it on and do it all very quickly. But I like to save that battery in case I kind of treat that thing as something's going wrong for me to start using it. But I do make sure that I plug it in, charge it up every couple of weeks, really, because the battery, even if it's 100% charged, will slowly trickle down. But it lives in my pack. It's zipped up. And then at work, for what it's worth, I turn it on in the morning and we actually monitor each other out there in the field. That's something you could do with a friend or loved one or someone who could be your person who could be looking after you there. And I think you're going to talk about some of that stuff as we get into the safety, talk about just general backcountry safety in a minute here. So we'll touch some more on that stuff.
Yeah, one good teaching point that came up, especially while I was working at parks, is if you are choosing to have it on, that's great, that works awesome. they do have some good safeguards against accidentally pressing the
Right.
SOS button, but somehow they still manage to get pressed. And it's better that you accidentally press an SOS than that it can't go out when you want it to. So not too much of a big deal, but don't pack it into a pocket. Give it some space. If you give it enough space, then you're less likely to accidentally trigger it. We've headed out for some searches a few times and called a helicopter and sort of taken everyone off their field work, and which is fine. That was our job. But yeah, just be careful about it, because a couple people didn't end up needing a rescue.
Yeah.
So if you can avoid that, great. But again, it's better that we accidentally search for you than that we don't search for you when we need to. So.
Totally. So yeah, I think having one, and then you can kind of choose your own strategy with it. But to be honest, mine's off most of the time.
There you go.
We got another question. This one comes from Andrew, and this will be the last question for now, and we'll move. I'll announce the next two prize winners, but just want to know what kind of medical or first aid gear you carry with you in the backcountry.
Oh man, that's a good question. So my small kit is, I'm trying to think of something that it's about as big as this water bottle, I guess, like something like that. And it's got one of my favorite things is veterinary wrap. I feel like I can do so much with it. I have something to stop a bleed. I have something to add compression to. I've got bandages, got a small sling, CPR mask.
I think I got a pretty similar kit. I also like, just from my Lake Louise patrolling days, we use these little sort of corrugated metal splints. I find they're really small, they're really light.
Mm-hmm.
You got lots of gear like poles you can splint with anyway, but I think I just got so used to those, and they are so small and light. I usually keep one of those tucked in my bag.
Totally. Yeah, Sam splint are real common.
Yeah, it's good to compare gear with the people you're going out with beforehand, because maybe someone's got something like, okay, well, I mean, we're getting a little bigger here, so not necessarily first aid gear, but it's okay to have different stuff than your partners, because then you've got more tools.
Totally. And I think along with that, just having warm clothes, like that people get cold quick.
I always keep even if it's pretty warm, I always keep my giant down jacket stuffed in my bag, because it is cold at night if you are not moving.
Yeah, and a rescue tarp is a pro move. They feel really expensive, but man, they're so sweet. That's one thing I always make sure I have with me. Good question.
Thanks so much, guys. We've got two more prizes to give away right now. These ones come from Backcountry Access and Revelstoke Mountain Resort. So let's go. The BCA, there we have a snow study kit to give away, and the winner is Stefan Peters. So Stefan, please email producer@avalanche.ca with your address, and we will send you over that BCA snow study kit. That's a great little thing. It's got like a little thermometer. It's got a little loop in it, so you can look at snow crystals and some other tools that will help you if you really want to get dig into the snow and really look around. Our next prize, it's a one day ticket for Revelstoke Mountain Resort, and the winner of that is Owen McNabb. So congratulations, Stefan and Owen. Once again, just email producer@avalanche.ca with your address, and we will send those prizes over to you. All right, back to Grant and Brent.
Wicked, thanks so much. Over to Brad.
All right, so you've already heard us mention the park or Rogers Pass or Glacier a couple times. Those are all the same places if you don't know already. Many of you moved here for the ski hill at RMR, which is awesome. But other people might have also come here because they heard about the legendary snowpack found in Rogers Pass. There is often more snow up there than in town, even though there's already a lot of snow in town. And there's some really great terrain. It's world famous for ski touring. People come from all over, but it is super challenging terrain. So here is a picture of some of the awesome terrain out there, but look at all those big avalanche paths over top of a drainage. And that's like a pretty common travel path up that drainage. So there's some big decisions to be made out there. So it's not necessarily for beginners. It's not a great place to start out if you're in the backcountry. Heck, some days I worked up there for 3 years. I feel fairly experienced in the backcountry. I mean, every day I'm humbled and realize I'm not as experienced as I think, but I feel pretty experienced. And there's days where I don't feel like heading up to Rogers Pass. I'm having a bit of a fuzzy mental day. Don't feel up for some like big challenging decisions. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Grant? Like, are there days you choose to not go
I mean, the thing that I love about the pass is going up there for high pressure.
Yeah.
Like it's so good to get out there and travel. And I mean, the tree skiing can be really good, but it's just so real. I mean, as you get into paths, like it's called frequent flyer for a reason.
Yeah.
There's a lot of overhead hazard at the pass. You got to have your game face on up there.
Yeah, we'll look at some more pictures of some of that overhead hazard, but I think the takeaway message here is it's not great if you're a beginner, and sometimes even if you're experienced, there's days where you might choose to still not go there and choose a mellower sort of day. So the other thing going on at Rogers Pass is that there's a winter permit system. We'll get into a few more details on that later, but you can see here in the red, that's the McDonald West Shoulder, the prohibited area, and it's right next to a popular ski touring area. So you really got to know where you are and make sure you're not in a place you're not supposed to be, because it can actually jeopardize everyone else's ability to access the backcountry and Rogers Pass. We'll get into some more details on that, and we'll give you some website links for more information to help understand it. So here we got a bit of an overlay of our two ideas. This is Connaught Creek. This is the drainage that heads up from the visitor center. You can see the visitor center. That might be the old hotel, but same parking lot in the bottom left corner. And there's that nice, easy drainage to cruise up. It's pretty easy terrain to walk up, but then you can see from the left and the right, all of those avalanche paths coming in and hitting the skin track. And they do that every year, multiple times. So it's easy terrain to travel through, but really challenging terrain to make decisions in. So this is why you'll probably hear us say this a few times. It's not a great place for a beginner in the backcountry. Also in this area, you have on either side of those drainages, you have some permit areas that maybe are open or closed. So you've got to check into that before you head out. Here is one more popular place. The value travel up is a little bit out of the screen on the bottom left. But just below, if you can read the Ravens there, those are two avalanche paths that drain right down into the Mousetrap. So you come up the Asalkan Valley, and the Mousetrap is this little box canyon that you have to go through, and you can't see the avalanche terrain that drains into it. And that canyon can fill up with snow super fast, even with not a really big slide. So again, we're really trying to drill home this, like, it's big terrain out there. It's hard to make decisions, and it's good to have some experience before you're heading out there, or hire a guide.
Absolutely.
Hire Troy Leahy.
Totally.
That guy knows his stuff. He'll take you around there and keep you safe. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the Rogers Pass permit system. So Rogers Pass has permitted areas. We're not going to start the video just yet. We'll get to the video at the end. That'll give you some more details, because throughout this there might be some burning question that will need to get answered, and I bet it's in that video. So there's permitted areas in Rogers Pass, along with the prohibited permanently closed areas. The permitted areas are either open or closed daily. You need to check the website every morning. They close them every night and then reopen things that they are going to reopen at around 7 in the morning. Sometimes it's a little late if it's a complicated morning, either with weather or with IT problems sometimes. You cannot enter a closed winter permit area ever when it is closed. In order to enter a permitted area when it's open, you need a Parks winter permit. The easiest way to do this is online. You need to take a test online, and Alex is going to put a link up for more info about the winter permit system, and also another link to take the test. So Alex is going to get those links up in the chat for you folks. Couple other things about the winter permit system. Even if you're not sure that you're going to ski there this winter, we did just try and scare a lot of people away from it. But you're going up with a guide, or you end up getting the skills and feeling like it's a good time to go out there. It's a good idea to get your permit now. The turnaround time may be a couple of days. They're operating with a different system under COVID because we can't go into the visitor center. Anyway, all the info should be on the website, but yeah, give yourself lots of time in advance. When you apply for a permit, you need to get a parking permit for your car as well. And this is assigned, your annual permit is assigned to you, your parking permit is assigned to your car. So you can't share that with other people either. So anyone, if you're going up with a buddy and they don't have a permit for their car, they're going to need to get that. We already talked about permit areas. Yeah, close every night, open again at 7 a.m. Emphasize again, you need to check every day. It changes every day. There are a few tours you can do in Rogers Pass that are not located in restricted winter permit areas. So sometimes you do have options, even if all the permit areas are closed. And it's a good idea to know where you are so that you don't venture into a restricted or a potentially closed area. There's lots of resources for this. There's maps in the visitor center. There's maps at trailheads. There's also the Rogers Pass Backcountry Access Interactive Map. I know that's a long word, but all of these, the links we've given you for the website should get you to that stuff. You can save that webpage on your phone. And if you load it in advance, you can look at your GPS location on your phone and it'll show you, am I in a red box or am I in a yellow box or a green box? I'm okay in the yellow and the green, but I'm not okay in the red. And there's a large fine if you venture into a closed area. You should not do this. It is actually threatening the ability to keep those areas open for the ski touring public. They threaten the highway, and we'll get into some more details on the video here. Yeah, you can basically just don't screw up the system for everyone else.
We really like skiing there, so
yeah,
we're all in together, and experienced people too. Like, I mean, guide the new folks if you see someone going to a place that maybe they shouldn't be. Like, let's be kind and courteous to each other, but like,
yeah, it's good to ask a friendly question. I think there's actually a good question on that in your permit test.
Great.
On how to treat someone or how to treat a question like that. Anyway, that being said, I feel like lots of people might be going through this, especially if you're new to town, and be like, so, but why is there a winter permit system? Well, this video here is hopefully going to help answer that.
We're being made aware of some technical difficulties here. And so what do we think we need to do there, Brent? We need to
stop sharing briefly.
Okay, you bet.
And then when you reshare, there's two buttons at the bottom of the share screen.
Cool. Stand by. Technical difficulties. Okay, share screen.
And then at the very bottom there.
Share sound.
There we go.
Thanks, Brent Strand. You're the
And
best.
do we need to optimize for video clip?
Let's optimize for video clip. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. We're going to get back into the right there. Stand by. Oh my God. Let me just enter a few passwords here.
You have to back that video up a bit there too.
Thank you. Right. Any Monty Python fans out there?
Yeah.
Right. Start again. Start over.
Give us a holler if you got sound. Now for something.
I'm not hearing any sound, but I'll share the video in the chat box so everybody can link directly.
Okay, I think it's all right. I think that all of the info is in the text, so it's less entertaining perhaps, but we got the info there.
Okay, maybe we'll let it go. You can watch it at your own leisure from the comfort of your living room. That'll probably be better anyways. So there's the link to the video. Okay, we're gonna be back here after we unmute. Okay, great. We're back.
All right. So sounds like we hit a bit of snag on that video.
Like we hit a snag.
Definitely watch this.
Please.
I would say the important part that I had left out because it was in the video is the reason this permit system exists is because the avalanche control program for the highway in Glacier National Park is based on the military using howitzers to fire at the slopes. So when the avalanche forecasters are asking the military to fire at slopes, they really want to make sure that no one is anywhere nearby. You might feel like it's a day that doesn't seem like there's going to be avalanche control, but that avalanche forecaster might have some reason that they're unsure, and they just really need to make sure if they need to pull that trigger that none of you folks are anywhere near it, because we want to keep skiing there and no one wants to hit you with a howitzer shell. Cool. That is that's a really like quick and dirty one. So watch the video. It's very helpful. Do the test. Yeah, it'll explain about the permit system. Moving on. Yeah, so that is our section on Rogers Pass. Are there any questions relating to that? Oh, great. Sounds like it was working the first time and then we screwed it all up.
Wow. I mean, you can watch it easily.
Yeah, you guys, I am not seeing any questions right now. So unless somebody chimes in or has something they want to ask, then I will just move on to giving out some more prizes.
Okay, great.
Oh, something. Let's see what we got. Oh, no. Okay, we can answer that one privately. All right, let's go to the draw prizes. We've got 2 more to give away, again from Dakine and RMR. So our first prize here is a set of Dakine Gore-Tex gloves, size medium, and the winner is Caroline Ose. I apologize if I mispronounced your name, but Caroline, please just email producer@avalanche.ca with your shipping address, and we'll send you those gloves. And then we have another lift pass for Revelstoke Mountain Resort to give out. Thanks so much, RMR, for all the prizes you donated for this night. This winter lift pass is going to go to Deborah Temple. So congratulations, both of you. And as I said, just shoot an email to producer@avalanche.ca and we will get you your prizes. All right, back to you guys.
Wicked. Thanks for that. Thanks for staying on. We're going to do a couple more things, then get into Nick McNutt's presentation, which we're all psyched for, and back over to Cookie for the anatomy of a search.
Yeah, we've got a really awesome group of volunteer search and rescue folks in town. They're a really dedicated crew. They're all volunteers. So if you ever see one of them, give them a thanks for everything that they do, all the hard work they put in to stay trained and ready to help you folks out. Every year, they respond to more than 60 missing or injured persons just during the winter season, including out of bounds at the resort. So we already heard a bit from Troy, but very basically the way that the runs of the hill interact with the shape of the mountain means you can leave the boundary and have it be really hard to get back in the boundary. So definitely best to know where you're going first.
And be careful following tracks.
Oh yeah.
Because you never know where those go, or if those people knew where they were going, or if they're going to pull a U-turn out of something and skin their way out of something. Like,
yeah,
the terrain's rowdy here. People ski in rowdy places. Don't follow tracks. That gets you in trouble in a hurry.
Yeah, multiple people have died while exploring out of bounds here. So it's definitely a place that you can have fun, but there's people who weren't prepared or didn't know what was going on and they ended up dying, and nobody's stoked about that. Nobody's stoked about that. And yeah, how easy it is to happen. I have a friend who has gotten lost down Montana Creek 3 times. Despite having done it the first and second times, he still somehow, so sometimes your stoke can get too much.
Well, it feels like you can keep skiing to the road and you really can't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the basic message.
The boundaries are where they are for a reason. The signs are there for a reason. We won't get too bogged down in that. If you do end up getting lost or injured, you're in the backcountry, you can't call ski patrol, or even if you're in the backcountry, you can't call ski patrol, try calling 911 if you do have cell coverage. We already talked about having an inReach or a spot or some other backup form of communication if for some reason you don't have reception or your cell phone battery dies. It's good to stay in one spot. Yes. Our instinct is to want to try and keep moving, but if someone's looking for you, you're easier to find if you're in one spot. And start a fire. Learn how to start a fire in the snow. It's a challenging place to start a fire sometimes, so get some skills.
It's a challenging place to start a fire. I know we did an Avalanche Canada training. I've heard CMH do this before too. That's just like, surprise, everyone try and start a fire. And man, when it's raining, even some of the old tricks, like, you can get it done, but things like having cotton balls soaked in Vaseline, dryer lint, some other things. Like it took all of us to make a fire. We thought we were all pretty on top of it, but it's
There you go.
hard.
It's a good thing to practice. Make yourself visible. Dark colors are difficult to see from the air.
But you look so cool.
Yeah. In this case, though, we have a picture of some dark branches with some good contrast on the white snow, making an SOS. That's one way to be seen. Yeah, bright ski gear. I think luckily these days a lot of people are wearing bright stuff so they can show up for the gram.
Showing up for the gram.
Showing up for the gram, get good photos. Yeah, brighter colors are easier to find. Rescue takes time, so we won't get too much into the exact steps of a SAR rescue. You can see here RCMP, EMBC, the SAR manager, to the team, other resources, and the prep, and this. So it's a good team. It's pretty well, like they run pretty slick, but it does take time.
And they're volunteers. These
they're
are
volunteers.
not
Yeah,
standing by for
they're
your
getting
rescue.
paged like at home, sitting on their couch watching TV. They might be at their other job. Anyway, the main message here is that it takes a long time to enact all these resources. So for example, if you're injured somewhere on Mount Begbie, it could take an hour or more before SAR manages to make it to where you are, assuming even that you're able to provide like an exact location where you are. So the help is there, but it's going to take a while. So if you are more prepared yourself, that is helpful. So here are some things that you can do. Adventure Smart is a great resource, adventuresmart.ca, and they talk a lot about the 3 T's. Have a trip plan, get the training, and take the essentials. We've talked a lot about the avalanche specific essentials. There's different essentials if you're heading out hiking in the summertime, things like that. Lots of information at this website. And we also have an Adventure Smart video. Do we dare?
Let's
Try
give it a shot.
Let's give it a go. See
Yeah.
how we go here. Can you folks give us a message in the chat? Let us know if you've got sound. Nice, great. Start again.
I think we can roll.
We got our French.
You know what? I think if people aren't with microphones, unfortunately, we're not speaking in French, so but we can roll on.
All right.
I wish we were. That'd be cool.
There we
We're
go.
back.
All right. I think that Alex already got some links up in the chat box for you. There should be a link to the Adventure Smart, the 3 T's, trip plan, training, and take the essential gear. Also, they have a trip planning app. Alex should have a link in the chat box for you there, but there's also a QR code on your screen right now. So we'll give you 10 seconds or so to take a shot of that QR code that will take you to the Adventure Smart app.
And Steve Wesley says that they will be in Grizzly Plaza from 6 to 9 p.m. along with RevStar for Midnight Madness, which if you're in town, Friday night, Midnight Madness, it's a really nice way to support the community, buy local, come out and meet your local Adventure Smart folks. I'll be out there, find a few records and Fable.
Yeah, thank some RevStar folks.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Hear more, get more details from them on how their whole system works.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, I think that we've given everyone enough time there. Do we have any SAR and Adventure Smart related questions that we can try and answer?
Nope. No questions related to Adventure Smart.
Oh.
So yeah, we could just keep rolling right on.
Cool.
Sweet. I'll do a quick answer to someone did find it for themselves, but EMBC, it's in emergency medical. So the ambulance.
Emergency
It's,
management, British Columbia.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I've been corrected. But
That's
either
okay. You got me on what is the RDPS stand for
way.
earlier today.
Yeah.
This deep forecaster geek talk. Do you remember?
I've forgotten now. It'll come back to me later. As soon as the presenter,
Yeah,
as soon as the presenter
exactly,
hats off.
Exactly. It's one of our shorter term models. Doesn't really matter. Moving on. Okay. So drop prize time.
all right, more prizes. All right, first prize. We got 2 prizes to give away now. The first one comes to you via the Revelstoke Snowmobile Club, which includes a nice sweatshirt, t-shirt, a toque, and a ball cap. And the winner is Patrice Boivin. So congratulations, Patrice. And then we have another lift pass to give away for Revelstoke Mountain Resort, and that is going to go to Sarah Moore. So congratulations to both of you. Email producer@avalanche.ca to claim your prize. And back to you guys.
Hey, we just got a last minute question there. Besides your AST1 and your AST2, what other courses or skills do you think people should acquire out there?
I think that one thing that always goes along like with an AST course is a basic first aid course. I mean, chances are if you're unlucky enough to have someone get buried in an avalanche, like there's going to be medical things you need to attend to. AST1, AST2, the companion rescue we talked about a bit earlier.
Yeah.
Managing avalanche terrain, MAT course.
Can you take an AST multiple times?
Absolutely.
Cool. Can you hire a guide and ask them to talk about their decisions while they're out there with you?
I think that's a sweet move.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a real pro move. If you've done an AST1 and you're looking to just get out with your riding crew and go out for a tour with someone who's experienced as Troy, Marty, any of the other great guides we have in town. I think that would be, yeah, that's such a cool way to get out there and experience that and see how they make decisions and just have your own private mentor.
Yeah. And I think most guides are pretty open to that. It's good to just have the discussion in advance. Say like, hey, I want to go out and here's what I want to do today. And they're going to be really good about knowing what their skill sets are and what they can offer you.
Absolutely. So hiring a guide is something that we just don't give enough attention to. I think that's a great idea.
Great learning opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sneak one more in here. It's been asked a couple times. We didn't catch it earlier in the thing, but in your experiences with avalanche burials, is there a certain like injury pattern or something that, you know, what kind of tools would be helpful in treating those injuries out in the field? I know Cookie, you guys talked about first aid kits and stuff along that lines with splints and stuff. Do you think you treat more trauma or asphyxiation? You know, like what?
I mean,
There a couple folks been asking that.
Yeah, I mean, avalanches, going for a ride in avalanche is a violent experience. Like there's going to be trauma. We know that we lose something around half the people who die in avalanches actually die from the trauma. You know, as if you get swept in to a tree at 50 or 60 kilometers an hour, just as you're tumbled over rocks, that kind of stuff, you need to be able to treat trauma, critical bleeds, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think pretty universally people are cold, whether they've got trauma or having trouble breathing. If you spend that much time under the snow, you're going to be wet and you're going to be cold if someone gets you out. So that's another, yeah, it's hard to be prepared for everything, but bring in some warm jackets, hot packs. We talked about rescue tarps. Yeah.
I think Troy just chimed in there too. I think, yeah, trauma in general, I see he's saying first aid problems, yeah, airway management, hypothermia, and sprains and fractures. I think we covered that.
There we go. I'd listen to him. I think that Troy has had more firsthand experience
for sure
with pulling people out than I have, for sure.
Absolutely. Learn the radio channels. And they're okay. You mentioned radios as an essential piece of kit, and you're going to learn radio channels that are key to services, and you guys keep the channels. So this one gets complicated because these are technically private channels you need to have a license for. And so when I'm speaking about radios, I'm really speaking about having a channel that you and your friends can settle on. Yeah, exactly. You and your buddies are on the same channel. That's why some of the real simple radios, like the BCA radios that work on the FRS frequencies, those things are great. And, you know, picking one of those things is a good practice. The one thing you don't want to do is find yourself on like a Rogers Pass, a kind of parks emergency channel, or hitting a repeater at the ski hill. They're probably not gonna be too psyched.
You'll feel like you're maybe being faster, but that's not faster than going through the proper routes. So
yeah. Rocky Talkie is good for -30. Okay, great.
Cool. Well, that's been lots of awesome questions.
Yeah, we're gonna
We'd
keep
love
this
to answer more, but we
moving.
got to keep going.
Keep this moving. We got one more thing, and then we got pro rider Nick McNutt up. Revelstoke Snowmobile Club. Someone just got t-shirt, hat, toque. They're kitted. So let's talk a little bit about the club. There we go. Okay, so Revelstoke Snowmobile Club, been around for a long time. We've got this great clubhouse out on West Side Road before you get into Boulder and Frisbee, some of that terrain. You'll notice that they have the great warming huts up high and a few key messages.
Got your chat box in front of your screen.
Oh, I thought only I could see that. Thanks. That's why we have, it takes a village to produce a good presentation. Got that some great warming cabins. All around really well organized club. And there's the website that Alex just dropped into the chat there too. And so it doesn't matter how you get to the trailhead, just make sure your sled is secure to your rig. Make sure you got the proper tie downs. I haven't seen one of these around recently, but pretty sick rig. I think that just says local shred dog if I've ever seen one like that. That might work for getting yourself to Boulder.
That guy's not working this winter. He's here to shred POW.
Totally. Montana plates, he just flown under the radar. He's here to shred POW, ride that 850, get her done. Put a POW sticker on that sucker, I'll say. But wearing a helmet, and it kind of drives me nuts. And some of my friends are guilty of, like, we go out sledding and they're wearing ski helmets. And I'm like, man, if we have a problem while we're like tandeming on this sled, like it's going to be bad for you. So I like to wear my sled helmet. There's a mechanism for injury. That thing goes fast in a hurry. And just, you know, loading, unloading, like I like to have a full face. That's just me. But at the very least, wear your ski helmet. But it's not approved for motorsports.
No, I wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to wear a real helmet. Second, do not tow. No towing on groomed snowmobile trails. You can think about how this could be bad if you're coming around a corner and someone's on the other side of the road. You can start having real problems in a hurry. So no towing on the managed snowmobile areas. I think that's just kind of a given, but take it home. Of course, if you need to tow a buddy out, keeping a nice short rope, but no towing skiers up and down. We're not shuttling at Boulder. We're not shuttling on the sled, the groomed sled trails. Look up and above and below. You just don't know who's out there. And there could be sleds and machines and riders everywhere. So have a good idea who's above you, who's below you before you start putting a track into something. Oh, thank you. And carry your skis horizontally. Skis and snowboards need to go horizontal, so not across. We don't want to be clotheslining each other. People are going fast up and down the sled road. I mean, I would like to, I feel like people go too fast sometimes. I'm like, let's just slow it down on the access road here a bit, buds. Like, we're out here to shred powder, not to set land speed records. That's just me. Slow it down a little bit, carry your skis and snowboards horizontal. Tandeming is fine if you're just going to a certain location. But we mentioned this earlier, but in Revelstoke, just don't follow tracks, especially sledding. Like, there's this a funny thing that's often said is like, you know, don't follow my track, you won't make it. And this happens all the time with weird stucks. Like, there's a lot of incredible talent out here. I consider myself a pretty average Revelstoke rider. Then you go out with someone like Nadine and just like watch real skill. And yeah, don't follow tracks. You might not make it. Get trained, you know, and that's just coming back to get the gear, get the training, get the forecast, like getting the AST course, no matter what you're doing. It's really important. You need to buy a pass too. If you're going to be going out a bunch, I would suggest getting a season pass. You know, the Snowmobile Club is always looking for different volunteers for the board, that kind of thing. So reach out to those folks. They have a great social media presence. All sorts of information at their clubhouses. They're out there to help, really helpful group. We're going to go into one more draw prize. See if we have any questions that pop up. Oh yeah, thank you for the small thing there, Brent. Let's get into some draw prizes while we get warmed up for Nick McNutt.
Sure. Two more draw prizes we have to give away right now. Both coming to us from Revelstoke Mountain Resort. So thanks so much to RMR for the prizes, all the prizes they donated today. The first one we are going to give away is a $200 gift card for Critical Parts. That is RMR's hard goods store. So this will be good for a pair of skis or boots or snowboard or some sort of backcountry gear. And the winner is Sebastian Major. So congratulations, Sebastian.
How much was that gift card for?
$200.
Damn.
I know, I could use
Nice.
that. I should have just drawn my own name. But anyways,
We on Critical Parts. That's great.
yeah, we also have another lift ticket for RMR to give away, and this one goes to Radim Sukana. So congratulations to Radim and Sebastian. Please email producer@avalanche.ca to claim your prizes.
Rad.
Sweet.
Over to you, Brad.
Cool. Well, I have the pleasure of introducing Nick McNutt. Nick is a pro rider from Kimberley, BC. He's now residing in Squamish. He's a year-round mountain traveler and a ski movie veteran with TGR, Teat and Gravity Research. Awesome movies. He's known for his deep POW exploits, whether that's big air or steep spines. You might view an amazing short video on Instagram of his, but I'm sure he'll tell you there's a ton of training, time, patience, and work that goes into all those adrenaline producing shots. Nick's going to share his thoughts on what are important points to always keep in the forefront of your mind when heading into the backcountry. What do you got, Nick?
Yeah, thanks guys. And yeah, thanks to everyone for signing into this. I think it's really cool how many people are taking this stuff seriously and they want to be better ski partners to their friends. And this time of year is always really exciting with the new snow, and it's good to keep it at the top of mind to be prepared out there and to do what you can to be the best ski partner you can. So I'm going to share my screen here. I've got a little bit of a slideshow to show you guys. Yeah, basically this is going to be a little bit of different information for the kind of people who might be using the backcountry in a less conventional way than some other people. Like typically people going out ski touring are looking for these long descents. They're looking for great tree runs. They want to be, kind of skiing huge vertical. And oftentimes as part of a film crew, we might find ourselves skiing kind of more what we call micro terrain or film terrain. So stuff that's like a little bit more consolidated, like high action, kind of short burst type of stuff. And, some people who might fall under this kind of category is, people who are going out building jumps or riding little pillow fields and stuff like that. Like this is all still avalanche terrain, but there's a few things that people don't really realize they can do that might make it a little bit more fun to ski some of this smaller terrain that, maybe these tips don't work for all types of skiing, but I'll share that stuff at the end. We've talked a bit about gear, and obviously we're all pretty familiar with the type of stuff that we should be carrying out there. I think it's obviously pretty common knowledge at this point, if you've taken any kind of an avalanche training course, that, you obviously need to be wearing a transceiver that's reliable and current. You need to be carrying a shovel and a probe, and you need to be prepared for, kind of the worst case scenario, which could be an injury. It could be potentially spending the night unplanned. It could be, needing to communicate to the outside world. All these things have been talked about already in this presentation, but it's worth repeating, and it's something that, you need to keep in mind. And these items here on the screen are obviously worth their weight in gold in the backcountry. There's no real replacement for any of these things when the time comes and you truly need, to start a fire, or you need to be able to talk to people outside of cell service, or you need warmth right away. Or
hey Nick, sorry to interrupt you, but I think we might not be able to see your screen here. Might have to do a reshare.
Oh, okay. I'll give that a try. Sorry, I might have just not. Classic Zoom move. Here we go. Let's try this again. My bad. Here we go. Try this. See if that works. It should be working for you guys now.
Yeah, you're up and working mode.
Perfect. Sorry. So yeah, here's the slide I was talking about. But this is all stuff that we all need to be really familiar with, and this is stuff that should be kind of no-brainer things to bring in the backcountry. And I say that including some kind of device that's able to communicate with people outside of cell coverage. So I personally think that that's an essential item in this day and age. They're inexpensive enough for people using the backcountry, and there's different types of plans you can get for these devices where, maybe you're only going on weekends or a handful of weekends a year, and you can just kind of have it activated for a less expensive plan. Or you might have it on all the time because you're going all the time. So something like that, like some kind of a device that's able to communicate outside of cell coverage. And then obviously, a way to stay warm in an emergency, a way to treat an injury, and a way to see in the dark, a way to start a fire. These things are all no-brainer items that we should all be for sure bringing. And I'll talk some more about that in a little bit here, but before I get too far into that thing, let's go, back to the beginning. Let's go kind of to the start of your whole training in the avalanche world and the backcountry travel world, which is, it might be the AST course, AST 1. Like most people on this, or most people thinking about getting some education, are going to be taking an AST 1. And it's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door and kind of start gaining, the lifetime worth of knowledge that you're going to acquire playing in the mountains. But it doesn't stop there. Just because you've taken an AST 1, it doesn't mean that suddenly you've got this big check mark and you're kind of good to go, right? This isn't like a cape that you can wear like a superhero. This is something that you need to be on top of all the time. It's something that is easy to lose. This type of knowledge isn't something you can hear once and retain, right? Like being able to have practice with your friends and have kind of an ever-growing knowledge in this space is crucial. And it doesn't just stop at avalanche training. Obviously, being like was mentioned, it's when you extract a victim from an avalanche, chances are they're going to probably need some more help beyond just being dug out of the snow. And that could mean that you might be the one taking care of a serious injury for quite some time until you can get some help. So a first aid course, like some kind of a wilderness first aid course, goes really far in the mountains as well. And it's something that you can never know too much of. And I think all of us here find ourselves constantly trying to learn more of this. It's really like a lifetime worth of knowledge you can never be a true expert at. It's always an evolving kind of school of thought. This wilderness medicine stuff is changing all the time, and different things are being taught that are sort of evolving with equipment and everything. So it's all worth staying on top of. Inspecting your equipment, obviously at the start of the season and throughout the season, you want to make sure that this stuff is reliable and trustworthy. This is life-saving equipment. So you want to make sure that you're looking for any kinds of damage that you might have in your shovel and probe, which everyone is pretty aware that these things are robust. Like they're built to last. They're typically made of, either carbon fiber or aluminum, and they're strong and we have trust in them, but they do break and they do fatigue. And even if you don't use them that often, maybe you don't deploy your probe all the time, but just having it in your backpack while you're ski touring and it's rustling around, these things do break. They have small fractures that you need to kind of pay attention to, like the cables on the probe or something to look at. Each end of each segment of the probe is something worth looking at. The little pins that keep the two parts of the shovel handle together is worth looking at. And obviously, if you see any kind of damage, it's definitely worth replacing that stuff. It's not really a question of whether or not you should replace it. If it's damaged, it's not worth carrying in the backcountry, because when the time comes, the last thing you want is for your probe to break or your shovel to break. So properly storing your transceiver. So in the off season, it's crucial to take your batteries out. Batteries are acidic and they can definitely corrode the terminals, and I've seen it happen before. So make sure that you're storing them empty in the summertime, and you're kind of throughout the season looking for any signs of damage. And maybe if you drop this thing in the parking lot, like an icy parking lot or something, like look really closely for cracking, and you want to treat these things well. They are strong pieces of equipment, but they're also possible to fail. As some of you may know, I had a device fail on me that seemed like it was in perfectly fine working order. That's another whole can of worms. And I'm not going to go too far down that road, but it's worth trusting your equipment and making sure that you're happy with, the state of it. And battery life is another one to make sure that you're happy with. Like, most outfits I've been to, most cat ski or heli ski operations, the guides are switching out those batteries once they dip down much below 50%. That's kind of when it's worth switching them out. But these batteries can run for a long time in these devices, but you don't want to be, pushing it much below half life on a battery. Batteries are cheap, so if your transceiver dies in the backcountry, that's really your own fault, and that's there's no excuse for that. So, and that's kind of like at the start of every day, you want to make sure when you turn that thing on that you're paying attention to how much battery life is in there, and you're staying on top of that because batteries are pretty cheap. And yeah, like I said, no plastic shovels. This is like something I see pretty commonly, actually. People are bringing these things because they're light, they're inexpensive. But what they don't realize is that digging through avalanche debris and ice with these things is almost impossible. And you're going to end up breaking this thing at the least opportune time, so make sure that your shovel is metal, and a small shovel, it's nice and light and everything, but being able to move snow is pretty crucial, and it's a pretty insignificant amount of weight to carry a slightly larger shovel. There's quite a few different sizes available, and maybe depending on the kind of skiing you're doing, you might want a smaller shovel if you're doing a lot more like long traverses and kind of ski mountaineering type stuff. But if you're kind of just more general ski touring, recreating, building jumps, snowmobiling, a larger shovel's going to be better, and you can move a lot more snow with them. So the extra weight's totally worth it there. And outdated transceivers. So I think it was mentioned earlier too, but having a digital 3-antenna transceiver is kind of mandatory at this point. This is kind of the current technology, and this up in the top right here, this BCA tracker, the original one was great when it came out, but it is not a current transceiver. It's an outdated analog model. Although it may still actually work, it's not what I would call a modern transceiver. This is kind of an old, this technology was from the 90s, and it's definitely something that you should be looking at replacing. And the Peeps DSP, a lot of you have heard obviously what happened there, but if you still insist on using a Peeps DSP transceiver for some reason, I won't be skiing with you. And I know a lot of people who won't as well, but make sure you do seek out the replacement plastic cage that they've decided is the adequate recall they've done. So look into that. And yeah, having a modern 3-antenna digital transceiver that you can trust, like this is the last line of defense in the mountains, right? So make sure you're happy with what you're wearing, and make sure you're happy with everything that your partners are wearing, because if you're buried, their transceiver is the one that's going to be finding you. Checking the forecast. So obviously Avalanche Canada has a huge resource with the MIN and their forecasting and their weather forecasting that they have, but try and go to all kinds of different weather sites you can. Read any kind of blogs, any kind of local like ski touring groups or recent trip reports, or Google is your friend on this, right? And trying to be as in tune with the weather forecast as you can for where you are and where you're planning on skiing is, it's really important, and it's not something you can know too much of, really. Weather is something we're always trying to understand. Even experts are trying to understand it, and it's changing all the time. So make sure that you're checking the forecast, reading all the avalanche bulletins, looking into the MIN and seeing what's been happening around you, and looking at what weather is coming, what to expect. And that way you won't be as surprised out there when you see something or something unexpected happens. And practicing. So this is something that I think a lot of people will take an avalanche course, like an AST1, and they'll feel, like I said, like they've done their due diligence. Like taking their AST1, they feel content with, being certified essentially to travel in the backcountry, but it's not really where it ends. And practicing this stuff is, crucial, because this stuff needs to be second nature, really. It has to be like a muscle memory. And the more you use this stuff, the more you practice with this stuff, the better you're going to be at it when the time comes. And when it's, a real rescue situation, hopefully you never have to experience that. But if that ever happens, the last thing you want to do is be trying to figure out how to use this stuff, right? So take the opportunity and use like any kind of a day that didn't go the way you thought, with, maybe some fog rolled in, or the snow's not very good, or, early season when you don't want to beat your skis up or whatever. Just go practice this stuff and have fun with it. You know, we do with TGR, we do quite a bit of like we do a multi-day course where we have kind of almost like an Olympics type of a rescue Olympic thing. We'll do different scenarios, but you know, you can do some pretty basic stuff like just having races to find multiple buried transceivers. So you can be the fastest at, you know, digging down to the bottom of a probe, and, you know, maybe you put like a plate of nachos up for the winner or whatever afterwards. Like, just try and have fun with it and make it like, you know, the good use of a day out there that otherwise was maybe kind of mediocre. And near the beginning of the season, this stuff's great to kind of like stay on top of and remind yourself of and be comfortable with. So, and also, like, you know, these people that you're skiing with are, in the worst case scenario, going to be the ones who will save your life. So make sure you're truly comfortable with that, because the last thing you want is to be, you know, swept away and buried and instantly think about like, man, I can't believe who's up there still, who's going to be trying to rescue me. Like, I don't have faith that they're going to be doing the right thing, or I don't trust their abilities. Like, you want to be picking your partners wisely, because these are really the last people who will be picking you up. Like, ski patrol is not going to be saving you from an avalanche out of bounds. By the time that, you know, a response is going to come out of bounds, it's a recovery effort for the most part at that point. So your ski partners really are your last line of defense, and those people need to be trustworthy. So stay on top of each other and give each other a hard time with it. Planning. So you want to make sure that you've all told somebody close to you what to expect, where you're going to be, and when you're going to be back. So, you know, these devices, these satellite communication devices are amazing. Right now, it's like not a big deal at all to just reach out and update people from outside of cell service, which is amazing. But that being said, it's great to have just, you know, the old school plan, and like, you know, if we're not back by this time, expect that, you know, something's happened. But as well as that, like, don't feel like you have to stick to the plan. You know, sometimes plans change for various reasons. You know, it could be like anything. It could be someone forgot their gloves and now you don't have enough time to get to the trail on time to get to what you were going to ski on time. And so you're switching it up and you're doing this. Just don't feel like you have to stick to the plan just because you've made it. It's okay to change your plan, but just make sure that you keep people in the loop with that plan, so that if you come back too late, something isn't, you know, and a response isn't triggered from search and rescue, and you're not trying to, you know, backpedal on some kind of emergency effort, because it's a huge valuable resource that we have with those guys, and they do amazing work. And, you know, it'd be quite embarrassing to have kind of a false alarm that was totally avoidable. So yeah, don't feel like you have to stick to your plan, but make sure you keep people in the loop. And what else I got here? Yeah, listening to people in your group, even if one person feels like they're not happy with the plan, you know, once it's kind of being undertaken, even if that person is the least experienced person in your group, it's not all right to dismiss that person. This is kind of what we call the expert halo. It's one of, you know, the heuristic traps, kind of the human factor, and relying too much on someone because they, you know, kind of have the aura of an expert, even though oftentimes they make worse decisions because they're stronger skiers or whatever. It's not something that should be dismissed. You know, if someone's got a valid concern in the group about where you're going, you know, you're up track, or, you know, just your overall plan for the day, like, one person's voice is worth listening to. It doesn't matter how experienced that person is. So make sure you pay attention to it and don't dismiss them. And yeah, that leads us into the human factors. So those of you who've taken an avalanche course have probably heard this acronym FACETS, which is, you know, kind of barring all the avalanche forecasting and the weather and all that stuff. These are all things that still end up happening. And a lot of these are basically the reasons why people get into incidents. So yeah, familiarity, you know, you do this all the time. This is the run you do all the time in the backcountry, like not taking it seriously because you've kind of done it, been there, done that a lot. Acceptance, you know, this is like you're trying to impress the people you're with, or maybe it's, you know, a mixed gender group. You're trying to, you know, impress someone of the opposite sex or something. This happens quite often as well. yeah, consistency. So, you know, we've got this plan to go do this. We've kind of done all this, come all this way. And, you know, the last couple times you try to do this, it clouded out on us, and it's finally sunny today. So you really feel like you've got to do it, even though there's maybe some red flags. The expert halo, we just spoke about that, but obviously not giving somebody too much of a, you know, of sway in the group's decision if some people are not feeling comfortable. Tracks, or the scarcity of tracks, which is, you know, feeling like FOMO, like I got to go ski that before someone else does, kind of thing. And yeah, social proof or social facilitation, or showing off, right? Like having previous tracks on the slope and feeling like, you know, people have already done this, so it's fine to do, basically. Making a ritual of your transceiver check. This is, you know, step one of leaving the gates at the resort or putting your skins on in the parking lot, is to do a transceiver check. Or even before, this is kind of something that has to be second nature. It has to be done every single time. And, you know, we're fortunate to have these backcountry gate devices, some places that have the scanner, which is, you know, an extra layer of being able to check, but it's not a straight replacement for checking. So make sure you can find each other's transceivers and be found by each other's transceivers. And, you know, part of the transceiver check obviously is making sure that you have adequate battery life in your device. So now you feel like you've kind of done all you need to do and you're ready to go ski the backcountry. So what do you bring? You know, people are bringing a ton of stuff out there. People are bringing not even nearly enough. Like you see people out there with no pack at all. So what do you bring? This is a pretty big question. And this is something that, you know, everyone is still trying to figure out exactly what the best stuff to bring is. I'm trying to figure it out. And, you know, those that know me well know that I don't like to carry a lot of extra stuff. I'd rather be unencumbered, but there's some things that you just can't go without, right? So let's go through this whole list. We got obviously your avalanche equipment, your shovel, probe, and transceiver. And I've got airbag there. An airbag, I think, is a great tool. And if you want to ski with one all the time, good on you. I think that's like, there's no harm in skiing with one. I do sometimes. I'd lie to say that I do all the time, but you know, I do depending on what I'm doing. They are heavier for sure, but they are a great extra layer of protection. And, you know, what you don't want to do with an airbag is think that because you have one, you're invincible. You see this often, you know, with newer backcountry users. Sometimes they feel like they've got an airbag, so they feel basically invincible. But that's not the case. It's just an extra layer of protection. But first and foremost, you know, your brain is your protection, and your judgment and the judgment of your group is your protection. So obviously some warm layers and spare gloves, and I like to say a spare buff, like a neck tube. Those things are pretty crucial to have like on you, I'd say. Spare gloves may be debatable, but like a spare buff is really nice, because if your neck and ears and everything gets soaking wet from skiing deep powder, like being able to put on something dry and warm against your skin on your neck and your face really goes pretty far. And warm layers, you definitely want to be carrying a layer that you feel like you don't need. Essentially, you know, if you're fully layered up when you're kind of standing around in the morning in lineup or something, you want to have another layer beyond that, more or less, that you have with you, because if something were to happen, being cold is a huge problem, and you don't want to be kind of like running on just barely enough clothes up there. So a headlamp, a lighter, and an emergency blanket, you know, these things are pretty much irreplaceable in the backcountry. You know, if you can't see in the dark, you can't build a fire, and you can't stay warm, those are all going to be huge problems. And those things are very light, very inexpensive, and there's not really an excuse not to have them. An extra set of batteries. So, you know, typically headlamps are AAA, so is your transceiver. I carry 3 extra AAA batteries in my pack all the time, and a whistle, which is a really easy way to communicate with people. And a lot of backpacks have them built into the chest strap, which is really nice. But if they don't, then, you know, it costs a couple bucks. And in the trees, it's really hard to communicate with each other. It's, you know, when you're yelling through the forest, your sound gets muffled really quick by timber. So having a whistle is really handy. ski straps. So yeah, the rubber ski straps, we call them heli straps. Those things are worth their weight in gold, and carrying a few of those. I'll show you a little bit more later what we can do with them, but they're really, really handy. They're inexpensive, and you can do a ton with them. You know, you can basically build a splint out of them. You can repair gear with them. You can repair your sled with them. There's a lot you can do with them, and they weigh nothing, and they're cheap. So food and water, obviously, and I like to bring a large, bright, waterproof stuff sack. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but doesn't really weigh anything and take up very much space. Radios or walkie-talkie. That's something that we use a lot, especially as a film crew, being able to communicate with each other. But I'd say in general, it's just really nice to have in the backcountry, or, you know, even on the resort sometimes on a powder day, like rather than taking out your phone and trying to call your friend, like just being able to talk easily makes a huge difference. And a lot of the radios on the market have kind of the hand mic thing, and you can mount it to your backpack strap, so you don't even have to take it out of your pocket. And it's really easy to just talk amongst yourselves in the forest. And there's lots of good options for radios, but a good quality set of radios is really nice, and it makes a big difference out there. Group gear. I know I've got glacier gear at the bottom. I'll talk about that in a sec, but group gear, you know, amongst your group, you want to try and split up some of this weight. Obviously, not every person needs to carry all of this stuff, but I think in your crew, you should all together have this stuff, because if something were to happen, it's going to make a huge difference in your experience out there. So a really quality first aid kit, you know, not a couple of Band-Aids. I'm talking about like a real first aid kit that can deal with some trauma, because most of the time in the backcountry, it's not going to be something small that you pull out the first aid kit for. It's going to be something pretty major. Bleeding is a big one. So taking a first aid course and having a good built out first aid kit in your group is really, really important. And maybe split that stuff up, because it does kind of get a bit heavy. But, you know, certain things like SAM splint and butterfly bandages, and, you know, it's a whole other thing to get into the first aid side of things, but be able to use that stuff and make sure you carry it. The rescue tarp has been mentioned a few times in this as well, but that I call that thing like mandatory gear at this point, because it's so useful. It's really light, and yeah, it can be your shelter for the night. It can be, you know, an easy way to haul someone around to get them to somewhere they might be able to get some help easily from a helicopter, or it could be a bivy bag for an injured victim who needs to spend the night, and they don't weigh very much. So rescue tarp, look into those. It's the one that I have is made by a guy in Calgary, Alpine Threadworks, I believe is his company. There's a wait list, I'm sure, to get one now, but they're really, really quality. Communication device, I talked about that already, but I would say that that's pretty mandatory gear, because really it's an expensive sport that we're all doing, whether you're, you know, skiing, snowboarding, snowmobiling, whatever it might be. And, you know, you probably mountain bike or hike or do something else outside in the summer, camp, whatever it might be. So this device works year round, and it's worth its weight in gold. It's really small, and it makes a huge difference in being able to just talk to the outside world. A belay style jacket and down pants. So this is like not your micro puffy. This is like a real substantial down jacket. Like think about what an ice climber might wear, and down pants, basically like a sleeping bag that you can wear. In your group, I think it's worth having something like that, because being cold is a real deal out there, and having all those feathers makes all the difference. So everyone in the group might need to wear their micro puffy that they're carrying, but having the big down layers is really important. An ultralight pad of some kind. So think about like, you know, like a little thermarest. I'll show you a photo of one later, but like different like little thermarests that are kind of those ultralight ones. Being off the snow makes all the difference in being able to stay warm. Really, even if you don't have as much, you know, insulation as you'd like to have, just being elevated off the snow makes a huge difference. So, and you can get these things that pack up to, you know, the size of a smaller than an Nalgene water bottle, basically. So a repair kit, you know, so some crucial items that can fix a broken binding, or, you know, yeah, maybe you just need to kind of jimmy rig your boot to your ski for being able to get out for whatever reason. Oh, sorry. Yeah, fire starter kit. You we have a lot of forest in BC, and if you're cold, a fire is a really good way to warm up. Being able to start a fire in the backcountry is really nice when you need to. And that also goes like saw and cord. I like to carry a saw that can be a snow saw and also cut wood. There's some on the market that can do that. So a snow saw / wood saw. If you're snowmobiling, chances are you're probably carrying a pretty good little saw anyways, because when you get stuck, often you might need it. And glacier gear, I put that in both, and you'll see why. This is something that doesn't get talked about that often. It's not really something that people consider as much as they should. And unfortunately, in the winter time, a lot of our glaciers are pretty hidden. You might even be oblivious that you're on a glacier if it's a good season. And we have them a little bit more in the higher terrain in the coast and the high Rockies and stuff, but glaciated terrain, pocket glaciers do exist all around BC. And often a lot of the best alpine terrain starts or finishes near or around or on glaciers. This is something that you can learn in a course. There's crevasse rescue courses readily available from all kinds of different guide outfits and stuff, and it's totally worth doing. If you're going to be on a glacier, this is something that's like very crucial to know, because if and when it happens, you don't want to be panicking, and falling into a glacier would be pretty grim. So make sure that you're aware, if you're on glaciers, that you need to be equipped and you need to have the knowledge to be able to deal with it. And you also need to practice this stuff, because unless you're using ropes all the time, like maybe you're a really active mountaineer or something, it's really easy to lose these skills. If you're not tying knots all the time and using this equipment, it's learning it once isn't really, it's the same as the AST, right? It's not something that you're going to retain very well without practicing it all the time. So everyone in the group should be familiar with this stuff if you're in glaciated terrain. Otherwise you're essentially guiding someone. If they don't know what they're doing and you're just tying a rope to them and taking them through the glaciated terrain, like, you are responsible for that person. And ideally everyone in your group knows what to do in a glacier, a crevasse rescue situation, right? And has the equipment for it. So yeah, and they're changing all the time. Glaciers are generally shrinking, but they're moving, they're alive, they're basically frozen rivers, and they're constantly changing. So I'll get into a few little tips here. Like I said, I don't really like to carry a lot of weight. I think most of us don't, but we need to carry enough. And so I always try to do my best to pick the lightest stuff that I can, while still making sure I'm prepared for anything that could happen. So I'm going through everything kind of with a fine-tooth comb. I even will weigh stuff, on a little scale, and see kind of what weighs what and where can I shave some weight, because it sucks carrying extra weight if you don't have to. And it kind of affects how much fun you have. Maybe you can't do that last run because you're too tired, or maybe you're going a little too slow for your objective that day because your pack's too heavy. So consider every item in your pack, how much it weighs, and make sure that you're trying to get the lightest stuff you can afford or can find. And being light and nimble is going to help you have a better day. And try not to bring big heavy items kind of as the just in case. This is kind of like an ultralight backpacking mentality, but like the just in case, there's two kind of schools of thought on this just in case. Obviously a lot of the stuff we carry is just in case, a first aid kit or a shovel and a probe generally are like just in case, but you do need to carry them. But think about like, the kind of the extra stuff that you're bringing just in case, right? Like go through everything, and if you don't need to bring it, then maybe consider leaving it behind or finding a lighter alternative or something that can act as like a dual purpose item. So, and significant weight savings can be had by swapping out things like your insulated big heavy steel bottle, or like maybe you've got an old school thrift store puffy jacket, or there's a bunch of stuff that you can look at and try and shave pretty significant amount of weight and volume and bulk, and just have a nicer time out there with a smaller, lighter pack while still being as prepared, or sometimes even more prepared. Like a lot of this ultralight gear is getting really, really good these days. So yeah, trying to pick and choose items in your pack. Like pick your heavy things that are easy first, right? Like a big steel, heavy insulated water bottle maybe isn't as necessary as like a little lightweight water bottle. And obviously, like we don't want our water to freeze, so that's another whole conversation. But you know, there's other ways to carry water without it freezing. You can boil water into an Nalgene and it'll stay unfrozen for a little while, and you know, things like that. This one, the gear cache, I use this all the time. So earlier I mentioned carrying like a little stuff sack that's waterproof and bright is important so you can see it in the snow. But pick a color that's, you know, the opposite color of the terrain you're going to be in. So don't pick like a dark green stuff sack, for example, or a white stuff sack. But I like to carry a pretty big one. You know, they pack down to nothing. So it doesn't really matter if you carry a 20, 30 liter one, whatever, they're all kind of going to weigh roughly the same. But this is something that I'll do all the time when I'm out snowmobiling, or if I'm out skiing kind of smaller terrain where we're kind of doing some hot laps. Like maybe we're skiing, you know, a few hundred vertical feet, or, you know, kind of what we call film terrain, basically, like kind of high action, short stuff, like little pillow fields, or maybe you've built a jump for the day, or maybe you're skiing some stuff that's, you know, kind of short elevation gain, and you're returning to the same spot often, and you've kind of got your base camp for the day. So you can kind of spend the rest of your day with a light pack while you're actually skiing. If you leave things like your extra water, I always will carry like 2 water bottles typically, because of this system. Essentially, I'll carry a water bottle that's my active drinking bottle, and I'll carry my spare water. And my active drinking bottle, I'll carry like a really small one. I'll show you in a sec. But you know, your big puffy layers, like maybe your belay jacket and your thermarest and that kind of stuff. Like if it's easy to get there, maybe you can leave a few things behind. And this is obviously like, don't leave everything in your pack except for your shovel and probe somewhere way away from where something could possibly go wrong. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is like, you know, how many bars and snacks and food do you need for this run if you're coming back to the same spot? Like if you're going to be roughly an hour or something, do you need to carry your whole giant lunch with your extra food? Or can you carry a bar for that lap and leave the rest of the bottom? And same with like a repair kit, you know, like if you don't need to be carrying that stuff around while you're actively skiing, maybe this is a system that could work. And it's not going to work all the time. And depending on what you're doing, maybe you're skiing huge elevation and your day is just only going to be 2 runs, and there's not really an approach. So you're kind of like going to ski and you're just doing 2 runs and you're done. The system's not going to work for you. But if you're out snowmobiling, especially, like maybe you pick kind of your base camp area and you can unload a few heavy things from your pack while keeping a lot of the essentials on you, and you can kind of go have fun with a nice light pack. So these are a few of my favorite things to always have. And this is stuff that I'm not leaving at the bottom. Like I just talked about, this is stuff that is like in my pack constantly. So I talked about these ski straps earlier, but these things are, they're some of the most useful little items you can be carrying around. Their uses are actually kind of endless, and you can just look at images of people who've done like kind of repairs or built like little rescue toboggans with them, or fixed up like their snowmobile falling apart, or attach their boot back to their snowboard or whatever it might be. Like these things are amazing, and if you each have a few of them, they can go pretty far. This is the little water bottle I like to carry. It's a little half-liter Nalgene, so depending on the objective, maybe this isn't the best thing to carry, but for me, this works because I'm often leaving a gear cache, and this is kind of plenty of water for me to ski one run, knowing especially that I've got some more down at the bottom later. And the Nalgene bottles tend to not freeze up that quickly, especially if you put your water in there a little bit warmer in the morning, maybe. But you can also buy little neoprene sleeves for them if it's going to be really cold. And if it's super, super cold, then maybe you do an insulated bottle. But a lightweight down jacket, that's something that everyone needs to have. And maybe it's not part of your group gear. You have like an extra, or, in your group, you might have a couple extra large down layers, but these are like kind of essential for, maybe you're stopping for lunch, you want to throw it on, or just trying to stay warm throughout the day. Or if something were to happen, you've got, kind of your security blanket. And also, the emergency blanket. These are super cheap. They're, like $8, $9. They weigh next to nothing, and they reflect all the heat back at you, and they keep the moisture off of you, and they're fluorescent orange. Sorry. And yeah, they're great. And if you don't have one, when you need it, you'll wish that you had one. So these little Thermarest seats, these are a pad that I like to have in my backpack all the time. And I'll typically, kind of either replace the little back panel in my backpack with it, or just tuck it in there because it weighs 2 ounces. It weighs almost nothing. And they're, nice to sit on when you're having a snack and stuff, but they could also act as a little bit of a splint. And it's amazing when you get off the snow, or even off of like having your, your skis, and you're sitting on your skis, like having this thing under you makes a huge difference in how warm you are. Typically people are insulating their legs a lot less than their upper bodies. And these things for 2 ounces, like you can't find more warmth than that. And if everyone in your group has one of these, suddenly you've got, a full size sleeping pad for somebody who may become injured. So super useful. And a wool neck tube. I like to carry a spare wool one, because I just find wool a lot nicer, especially in the kind of the wet snowpack we have here on the coast. It's just nice to have a dry one you can put next to your skin. And like I said, having your neck and ears and everything warm makes a big difference too. And then this isn't really a safety item, but a wax scraper is another one I like to carry, because I find often snow and ice is just forming all over the place on everything, and it gets frustrating. So being able to scrape your skis off really quickly, or being able to scrape your top sheets, or chisel out your bindings, or there's all or the backside of your backpack maybe get all frozen. Like having a little quality wax scraper, not just like a little debit card, makes a huge difference and makes that super quick. So yeah, and like these guys said earlier too, the first goal is always to make it home. So have fun out there, and you should be able to challenge yourself while still being safe. And if you're comfortable with your ski partners and you're prepared, then I think you've done everything you can to try and be the best you can out there, and making sure that you trust your partners is a huge one. So stay educated and practice. And yeah, I don't know if there's some questions, but I'll hand it back to these guys.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Nick. It was good to take that a little bit deeper. And we were just chatting here in the background too about glaciers and how fern snow has changed with these really hot summers. And yeah, good to get into some of those deeper expert tips and trade. Really appreciate that. And plus, like anyone who's seen Nick out there shredding, it's just so easy to take it for granted and think that you just go out and make that happen without any effort. But there's a lot of careful planning that obviously goes into it.
He has a whole extra job.
Totally. I like that about training Olympics too. And that's a great way to motivate your crew. It's really easy to not do that stuff, and you got to really get people into it.
Yeah, you can hide some treats with the transceivers.
Totally.
So when someone gets a treat when they find the transceiver each time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. I bet we have some questions. Alex, I'm sure you're watching for questions for Nick.
Yeah, we got a couple of questions here. Chris B asked if you carry a cord or rope in non-glacier terrain at all.
Yeah, so I always have like a little cord for being able to cut snow pits with, just like a little piece of paracord with some knots in it. And I'll bring that, but I don't typically ski with a rope. Although I do snowmobile quite a lot, and there's a rope that basically lives in the little storage compartment of my snowmobile. And I bring a fair bit of stuff snowmobiling. I think it's, a great way to access the mountains. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to have access to a snowmobile, you'll realize quickly that having it as a base camp, you can kind of bring everything, which is nice. But as soon as you start carrying everything out there, you have to kind of trim stuff. And so I don't typically bring a rope, just ski touring, say from the resort, unless our objective for the day involves significant glacier travel or glacier hazards. And that's the kind of thing that's always changing, and it requires judgment to navigate. And here on the coast, like in Whistler, our main alpine ski touring area that people go to is in the Spearhead Range off of Blackcomb, which is all glaciated, and people are there all the time without ropes. And those glaciers are changing all the time. They're getting a little bit more dangerous all the time. And it wouldn't be surprising, unfortunately, to hear of someone going in to a crevasse who is unprepared for it. And it's something that you have to use your judgment for, right? And a lot of these glaciers midwinter on a fat snowy year are not as dangerous as, say, maybe early season when there's thin snow bridges, or late season when they're starting to collapse. So it's a judgment thing, but it's not in my day-to-day packing list.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that answer, Nick. Notice you, Peter Lawler just wanted to know, he noticed you brought water bottles with you instead of a bladder system. Is there any reason you prefer bottles to a bladder?
Yeah, I just find the bladders in the wintertime, they freeze up. That's the main thing. And maybe you've got like a little bladder, like a quality one with a nice screw-on lid that you can keep next to your body, like inside of your jacket or something, and that might not be an issue. But like a camelback kind of style thing, like with the hose, I find even with that little insulated tube and stuff, it just wasn't really worth the hassle to me. And if it works for you, that's great. But I also find they're just more prone to leakage and stuff like that. So I think like the tried and true bottle is just a little more secure. And the last thing you want to do is have like, you know, your down jacket and everything all soaked because your bladder leaked all over. It's kind of a day wrecker. So
Okay, great. Question that's probably maybe Troy or Brad, one of the search and rescue volunteers, could answer. Is it true that the only color seen by search and rescue in all weather conditions is bright green? That's a question from Shannon.
I don't know.
I
All right.
don't know about bright green. I'd say any bright color is helpful. What is not helpful when you're looking for people from a helicopter is black on black.
Yeah, at Parks Canada, whenever we were in a rescue situation, we were wearing orange jackets. And I know the push was for us to just wear orange jackets all the time we were in the field. If anything, if we ever had to be picked up by a helicopter.
Yeah, high contrast seems to be the ticket there.
Okay, and I just noticed we got a response in the Q&A box from Caleb Burns saying he's involved in SAR, and he's found that a very distinct bright blue is the most visible. So there you go. There's one option. One last question we've got. I think this goes for our two hosts tonight, Grant and Brad. And the question is from Sam Matheson. He said, "I've heard mustaches make you ski better. Is this true?"
I think there's quite a bit of lip hair on this call. I don't know if any there's no shown lips here.
I've always said that every time I shave my mustache, Grant Helgeson feels a disturbance in the force. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it answers a question.
Yeah, I'm looking at Nick here, and I think long hair must be the secret to success.
Yeah, just generally looking like some form of dirtbag probably helps you ski better. Just you got to have something.
And I feel as you age, an authoritative mustache, it's just like, yeah, cool old guy move.
All right.
Good question, Sam.
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
All right. Well, I'll pass it back over to Grant and Brad. That's all we had for questions. So go for it.
Cool. Well, we're coming to the end of our presentation tonight. We want to give one more plug. We sort of mentioned it in passing, but Avalanche Canada's avalanche forecast went live this afternoon. So that is a forecast is posted this afternoon for tomorrow. So as of now, we've got full forecasts, public avalanche forecasts going. That's exciting. Feels like the start of the winter.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think the only thing we have left is a grand prize. Again, RMR coming up big with the prizes today.
Yeah. Thanks, RMR.
An AST1 course. And I believe Alex is going to draw a name for that AST1 course at RMR.
Drum roll, please.
All right. And the winner of the AST1 course at Revelstoke Mountain Resort is Annie Lau. So congratulations, Annie. I see you're still online. So great. And I hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and hope you get to enjoy a great AST1 course as well at Revelstoke Mountain Resort.
Awesome. Psyched for you, Annie. Over to Brent to wrap it up. Thanks so much, Nick. Over panelists. Take
All
it away,
right.
Brent.
Thank you, folks. That was great. Now that's a wrap. What a fantastic pile of information tonight, everybody. All those new folks to the backcountry, remember, get the gear, get the training, get the forecast, understand what you're getting at out there. At Avalanche Canada, we are a nonprofit organization. We thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate your interest in avalanche safety. You can support programs such as this and others like the forecasts and training programs, by donating to Avalanche Canada. It could be $10, $20, $1, whatever. There's a link in the chat box there you can click on and do some donations. All our presenters tonight were such a wealth of information. I just can't express how much good they do out there spreading the word for us at Avalanche Canada. Our next webinar, Wednesday, December 8th, understanding the nature of avalanche problems. Pre-registration is required, folks, and hope you register and get on for our next webinar in 2 weeks' time. I hope you all had a great night, and thanks for attending.